All right, as you're coming back from lunch, is this microphone on? You can hear me? Yes? All right, great. Great. So as you're coming back from lunch, first, thank you, and I hope your bellies are feeling good and full. And I hope you're not sleepy, but if you are sleepy, it's okay, because we're going to throw 3 more ignites at you here in just a bit. What's happening at the chaos at the board right now, hopefully all of the votes are in. We don't necessarily count all of the votes, so if you haven't had a chance to vote, sorry, but it's cool. So the schedule is now being arranged. I've given these folks, these fine folks that are arranging the schedule, a limit. They have 5 more minutes to get it done. There's a lot of negotiations happening. If we waited until everyone was happy with it, we would never have the discussions. The discussions for the rest of the day would be about what goes where. And then it would be happy hour, which maybe would be, and then we could drink away our sorrows that our talk didn't get put on the board. So in about 5 minutes, we're going to start our ignites. So if you are one of our next 3 ignite speakers, you should see James over there. That's James walking that way, but you should meet him there because he's going to come back. All right. Okay, I'm going to call time. So we're good. Do we have the... Oh, we're good. We're good. All right. Then I need you to get away so we can bring down this screen. All right. So I have a question for you. I would like you to raise your hand if you met someone new at lunch. All right, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's most everyone met someone new at lunch. As we go into the open spaces and the rest of the afternoon, make sure you take that opportunity to meet someone new. There are folks here like Matt who have been on a DevOps journey for 4 hours. There are folks here that have been on a DevOps journey for 6 years. We all can learn from each other and have great stories to tell each other, and I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to chat with and get to make some friends. The other thing that's true about most of our audience is we're all very close to one another. Like, most of us live or work within 100 miles of right here. And so there are plenty of opportunities in this area for you to get together at events like this. How many of you go to meetups on a regular basis? All right, the rest of you, you should go to meetups. I know it's weird because meetups usually happen after work, and I just said, hey, when you're done with work, please go to work. And you're like, no, what I want to do is go to family because that's better. And I agree, family is better than work. But you do get an amazing opportunity to meet great people, share ideas, make new connections as you go to meetups and so forth. Those of you that have been to meetups before, how many of you feel like I went to one meetup and I will never go back to a meetup again? And it was a waste of my time, no? Just one person. So, like, it's not statistically significant. You can completely ignore him. Also, just a tip. In this area, you can eat pizza for free at least 5 nights a week. Just go to more meetups. You can have all the pizza that you want. Maybe good, maybe bad. All right, James, are we ready for our next round of Ignites? Do we have microphones and Ignite speakers? All right, before they get started, let's give a preemptive round of applause to our next Ignite speakers.
All right, everyone. Well, first up, we have Tim Grandinson going to do a talk on containers and automation.
Thanks. All right, all set? All right, so I'm going to start with a brief history of a different kind of container, basically shipping containers. So in the old days, if you wanted to move goods across the ocean, you'd scoop up a collection of loose goods, a combination of bags and boxes and containers. You'd jam it into a ship and zip it across the ocean. So this worked pretty well, but loading and unloading at the docks was time-consuming and labor-intensive. So around the 1950s, a guy named Malcolm McLean came up with this notion of an intermodal container. So this is a container that you could take directly from a truck and move to a ship and then onto a train. So this notion really basically gained in popularity when 3 things happened. So first, there was a standard that defined what a container was. 2, there was a defined way of interacting or interfacing with that container. And 3, there was an ecosystem of tools that helped you interact with these containers. So how does this help us think about DevOps? So for quite some time, we've had tools like Hudson and Cruise Control that could take software application code and move it across different environments, so dev, test, prod. But the problem is that we don't really support just software application code. Really what we support are full systems, and these systems include software application code, but also things like dependencies and libs and configurations. So what we really need is something that can package up all that system stuff in addition to our software application code. And if we could package all that stuff up and move that package or container across different environments, we'd have a standard way of deploying, and we'd reduce our differences between our environments. And that's really one of the advantages of containers, is that we can sort of kill that works in dev problem. So at this point, you might be thinking, hey, containers are a good idea. Where do I start? So you might read about Docker, and then that leads to Docker Hub, and Docker Compose, and Docker Machine, and Shipyard, and Kubernetes, and Swarm. And all these things are probably not what you have in your normal CI/CD pipeline right now. So that seems like a lot to tackle right away. So what I'm saying is maybe you should start with the usual suspects. Maybe your container Kaiser Sose has been with you for quite some time. So On the next slide, you'll see a bunch of tools that probably do look a little more familiar. So there's all kinds of tools like Ansible, SaltStack, Chef, Puppet, Jenkins, as well as a lot of the cloud environments that you might be deploying to. They're all compatible with Docker. And as Docker has gained in popularity, all these tool sets have accommodated that. So now Docker and containers look a little bit like shipping containers. They're standard, there's an API, and as we just saw, there's an ecosystem that can support them. So now onto an example that harkens back a little bit to the experimentation. So this is an example of using containers to deploy multiple simultaneous instances of a software in one environment. So basically, you can do experimentation and debugging and all kinds of things. So we use an open source stack, and we've placed a very high burden on our developers. So we've asked them to do 3 things. That's probably 2 more than usual. So we've asked them to tag their code. We asked them to enter that tag into a Jenkins job, and then later they have to remember a URL and type that in. So it starts off very simply. Developers come in, they tag their code, check it into source control, well, check in, then do tagging. And then we have a Jenkins job templates. And these job templates set up specific commands that are linked to one container and an associated version of software. And so as a developer triggers that job, Jenkins goes out, reaches out and gets our baseline Docker image, which has our application server in there, applies the correct version of code, and stuffs it out into Amazon. Also, it reaches out to Nginx and adds an entry to the proxy and does URL forwarding for that specific container, so you don't have to remember some weird URL to get to it. So at the end of the day, this leaves us with an on-demand, push-button way for developers to get multiple environments set up without involving the operations or the engineering team. Yay, so they can do experimentation and all kinds of good stuff. And then just one final note that containers are completely recyclable, so please do remember to dispose of them properly when you're finished. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Lisa Spory, who's going to be doing a talk on automation and analytics.
Yeah, I'm ready. So today I'm going to be talking about my team's adventures in DevOps within the context of Agile Analytics. And really what Agile Analytics involves is applying Agile practices within the context of business intelligence and data warehousing, which is something that is usually not what you think of when you think of automation. When I talk about the data warehouse environment, we are the central repository. We're being fed data by over 30 different source systems, sometimes multiple times a day. And in my particular stack is a reporting tool, ETL, and the database behind. In the good old days, I like to think of data warehouse teams as the cavemen, and we're recording history on the wall. And as long as those beasts are flying past our cave in an ordered manner, life was good. We could keep up with our cave drawings. But now it's Agile. And changes are coming at us from every direction, multiple Agile teams. There's really no rhyme or reason to teams that are just throwing out database changes, and we really lose track. We can't keep up. Our cave drawings get all sorts of messed up, out of order. So we could consider putting more cavemen on the job, but without something to orchestrate it, they would probably just start hitting each other over the head with their drawing sticks instead of actually keeping up. We could get a better stick, maybe use stone, but just a better tool alone really isn't going to help us keep up. So in order for the data warehouse to evolve in this new Agile world, we really needed to look to automate. But the standard set of tools are typical tools that you use in application development, where you have source code. For some reason, it's just harder for us on the data warehousing side. One of the primary challenges is because we're dealing heavily in COTS packages. We do not have a process where we are extracting, compiling, and deploying code that we control the source code. We are taking binary products and putting them out there through a GUI. We also have very, very database-intensive deployments. It is very normal for us on any given weekend to rebuild a 2.6 billion row fact table. And sometimes it takes all weekend to do it. And there's multiple steps. So very, very large volumes. We also have very, very manual intensive deployments, just the nature of it. Lots of handoffs, lots of late night screen sharing sessions, typically between your development team and your operations team. That usually boils down to, help me type exactly what I say. Another challenge that we have on the data warehouse side is we are tightly coupled to those over 30 systems. And those are agile teams cranking out changes. And if one of those source systems pushes a database change and it breaks us, we're broken, and you don't have reporting the next day. So when we look at the deployment process for reporting, as I said before, very manual, extract the code, hand it off to a person who's going to then log into some kind of a GUI tool and import the binary code through this GUI interface. When we look to automate, we look to some tools that are going to look very familiar. Of course, Jenkins becomes our orchestrator in the center. We're pulling out of a repository. But heavy use of command line interfaces to do the BI deployment. So we're using WLST and the OPMN to automate. When we look at the after picture then, Jenkins is pulling the code out, and this is just that binary COTS. It's calling the WSLT to do the import of that binary code through the command line, and it's using the OPMN to bounce the services. When we look to then automating our database deployments, life got really tricky. Database deployments, as I said, are very long running, sometimes all weekend, sometimes a week. There are multiple handoffs where we'll do some database code, then we need to run some ETL code and back. And so to handle this, we keep Jenkins in the center as the orchestrator, but we brought in Liquibase to handle the database changes. And we needed to leverage Apache Ant because we don't just deploy to one database. In production, we have multiple databases for different purposes. So when we look after, we're pulling the code. Jenkins is calling Ant and basically telling it the Liquibase properties file, which is giving it all the information about the target database, staging versus maybe our data mart database. In order to leverage Liquibase, we had to leverage a lot of customizations. So we needed to use plugins so we could use some of the advanced object types like materialized views. We also use the rollback feature, very critical, so we can do incremental restore points. I also talked about the type coupling. And so when we talk about a CI/CD pipeline, we want to do some automated testing. We actually used one of our automated testing tools so that we could test the interfaces between our source systems and ourselves. And what this automated testing does is it looks for things that can break our ETL. And what's interesting about it is that we can put this in our CI/CD pipeline, and we also can integrate it into the CI/CD pipelines of our source systems so that when they push a change, it can flag that they're going to break the data warehouse. And they can give us a call and let us know or hit us up on Link or whatever. So in summary, automating database builds is challenging, but it's doable. You need to use command line interfaces where you can, and you got to do it incrementally. Thank you.
All right, our last Ignite for today is Drew Showers, and he's going, and he's going to be doing the talk on process transformation.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Okay, I'm used to talking with both my hands, so I'll do the best I can. My name is Drew Showers. I've been involved with DevOps transformation for a few years now. So today, you can see the title of the presentation is kind of long, but let's talk about what an approval-centric process is. So today, approval-centric process is kind of what we experience now. Every software change goes through this rigorous process on its way to production. So we want to change that. But let's take a look at how we got there. So it really was driven by manual processes or practices. So manual processes are not repeatable. They're hard to control, very error-prone, really hard to get ground truth of what the real posture of the software change is and the status. So what we did to minimize that risk is establish this high ceremony set of processes. So we have a bunch of approval gates, lots of meetings, conference rooms full of people, lots of documentation that goes along with that likely is out of date. But what really slows it down is these meetings or gates only occur maybe once or twice a week. So if you're trying to accelerate your delivery frequency, you really have a lot of bottlenecks in trying to move that software change through. Additionally, what happens is if there's a breakdown in that process, we have an outage or whatever the case may be, the tendency then is to add more process, more approvers, right, to the point where it's almost impossible to get a software change through into production in a timely manner. However, luckily automation came along, particularly around build, deployment automation. Infrastructure automation has really helped a lot in repeatability and control. Unfortunately, there's been some, ran into some unforeseen issues along the way of transformation, particularly around build automation, deployment automation, kind of blew holes through the testing practices. And a lot of times it requires new skill sets to be able to adapt to the high frequency of software changes. But really what we're interested in this context is the data that the automation provides. So every automation tool, Jenkins, Subversion, Git, Sonar provides just a plethora of data. But the problem is at the levels that we really need it, that information, getting real valuable information is hard to get. So what happens typically is management or whoever the leadership is will ask the folks that live in these tools then to get the, capture the information, create a report, send it up, and then we take these reports and go back to these high ceremony meetings and go on and so forth. So although it helps, it's really not getting us to the point where we can move software through the delivery process faster. So as the gentleman from Capital One said this morning, and wherever he is, he really helped me out with this because I was struggling with the time. But release automation, delivery automation, pipeline automation, whatever you want to call it, really is a required layer on top of these point tools. So what this does is orchestrates every action and every step of moving a software change from development into production. And because it has intimate knowledge of all those point tools, we can now extract, aggregate the data from those, and now be able to have established success criteria. So now, very plain English, right, or very plain language, we can say, did it pass or fail? Is it red or is it green? And this is really the basis, to get to this point, it's really the basis to begin real transformation in the organization. Because this is what builds the confidence that what we say is going through the pipeline is actually going through the pipeline. So to begin the transformation, so instead of approving every single change of the software, let's start approving the process, inspect and approve the automation, inspect and approve the pipeline configuration, so that as we move software through the pipeline, we get the indicators, and if the indicators are green, then there shouldn't be anything that impedes the velocity of that software through the process. It should only stop on exception. So if it's yellow, maybe we don't have enough test coverage. If it's red, then something really broke. So that's where we want to get to. So how do you get started? In my opinion, the pipeline automation is absolutely critical because without that, it's really difficult to make the decisions. Start small. Pick a project that's important. Start small and call it a pilot. and honestly, that gives you a lot of breathing room and be able to work around the organization to eliminate certain processes, to tweak other processes, or to incorporate new processes. And then try to separate yourself or that project from the legacy baggage in the organization so that you can tighten up the feedback loops, you can pivot quickly when you need to without a lot of ceremony around that pivot. That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, a final round of applause for all of the Ignite speakers, please.
All right, thanks, James, and thanks again to all of our Ignite speakers. We do have 6 more Ignite talks tomorrow as well, and as James mentioned, one of them might just be an Ignite karaoke where you could participate as well, so that's going to be fun. Okay, we're just a skosh behind our published schedule, but it's okay. We're totally going to make it work and get exactly back on schedule. So here's how the rest of the afternoon is going to work. We have 3 open space discussions that we're going to go through. We have 8 different locations for them. The schedule is over here on the board behind the screen, so you can't see it. So sorry, just figure out which topic you wanted to go to and find it. No, but seriously, here's how we've arranged them. The screens will go up. You'll be able to see that. We're also posting them right now on the online schedule, and I'm going to read you what the first topics are to help you figure out where you want to go. But when you get there, there are a couple of things. First, as you get into the groups, if you look around, the chairs, 4 of the spaces happen in this room. The chairs here are not really conducive to conversations. So we're going to ask for your help. When you go into a space in this room for a discussion, just move the chairs. They're not very heavy. Some of them are even on wheels. Arrange them into a circle so that you can have a discussion. You'll have 45 minutes for each one of the discussions. What I would recommend, what you'll find is that there will be lots of people in the discussion. I would recommend against spending the beginning of the discussion introducing each other, like going around the circle and introducing yourselves, because you only have 45 minutes for the discussion. So a tip there is maybe as you're about to speak, let people know who you are or where you work. You can lie to them if you want. Like they're not going to check your records or anything like that. So let them know that, but don't take time introducing everyone in the group. The other things that are important there, you should identify both a facilitator and a scribe. They can be the same person. It's better if they're not. The facilitator's job really is to make sure that the conversation continues along, that everyone in the group who wants to has an opportunity to speak. The scribe's job, and really you can have multiple scribes, is to capture notes from the session. So we have the Etherpad. It's e.devopsdaysdc.org. And you'll see it. Oh, we took away the screens. I see it. It's right here in front of me. But when you go there, you'll see things like open space, 2 of diamonds. And what you'll see in the various sessions as well as on the board, we actually have cards that have been taped to them. So open space number 1 at 2:20, which we're past, but the first open space 1 will be the 2 of diamonds. There's a 2 of diamonds Etherpad. Take your notes there. Does that make sense for everyone? You kind of following what we're saying? All right, very good. So take notes there. So the tips I'll give you quickly, the tips for success. We have to identify a facilitator, identify a scribe, and allow everyone to speak. You maybe have one of these little cards. I recommend carrying it with you so that you have these reminders. Tips for success are participate. You will get out of these discussions what you put into these discussions. The afternoon is really yours. Remember the law of 2 feet or the law of mobility. If you're not getting anything out of that discussion or not putting anything in, go to a different discussion. That's fine. And the reason we emphasize that is kind of twofold. 1, I want to give you permission to walk up and leave a conversation. 2, I want you to understand that we aren't going to think you're an asshole for doing that, right? And we all agree that like that person isn't getting something out of this conversation. I don't have to have ill will or ill feelings towards that person. They're just going on to get the best out of this conference. Make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So everyone that wants to speak, make sure they have an opportunity to speak. And really this is, in part it's the job of the facilitator, but frankly we're all facilitators for these conversations. If you find that there's one voice that's simply dominating, please ask that voice, or probably ask that person because the voice can't hear you. But ask that person, maybe you could let someone else speak or something along those lines. I like to think of it as the golden ratio. Most of us have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So think about that. You can listen twice as much as you speak. And then also help capture notes. The other thing that's not on here as a tip for success is have fun. Like this should be an enjoyable part of the day. So let me give you the quick lay of the land, the map that we're going to set up. So open space 1 is going to be over here. And again, in this sort of corner, just arrange the circle, or arrange the chairs into a circle to make it good for a conversation. Open space number 2 is going to be right back here. Open space number 3 is up here. Open space 3 is back there, and open space 4 is up here. Geez, you guys know this better than I do. So there are 4 places in this room. 1 is there, 1 is there, 1 is there, 1 is there. Is that better? Like, all right. I told you, sometimes I lie. Then there are 8 spaces total. So the other 4 spaces are actually in the cafe, and there are at the pillars. There's a 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So from my left, 5, 6, 7, and 8 says Mike. So you will find the things. You'll have the discussions. Enjoy this time. Because of the law of 2 feet, you will find that there are people that are butterflies and bees. Butterflies just kind of float around from one to the next, and bees kind of go in and say a bunch of words, and then they walk away, and then they go in and say a bunch of words to the other one, and then they go and walk away. And so it's okay. You can embrace that. I'm a butterfly, I'm a bee, or I'm just going to sit at this one space the whole time. So enjoy. We will meet back here at 4:50 for a little closing remarks, and then we'll break off and have the happy hour. Thanks. Oh, no, no, sorry. I was going to, I told you, there's always more. I told you I was going to tell you what's happening where. I'm not going to point to them, I'm just going to read them. So for the first one at 2 o'clock, or at this time, barriers toward automation, that's going to be in open space 1, which is wherever the number 1 is. Open space number 2 will be the DevOpsSec talk. Open space number 3, culture change, and how do you introduce it, how do you bring it into your organization. Number 4 is cloud provider, independent or dependent, which should we be? Next, CD pipelines with multiple disparate applications. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's number 5. Number 6 is decomposing complex. That's all I wrote, and that was enough notes for me to remember what it is. Decomposing complex some things, I don't know what. Then number 7 is explain to the auditor. So how do you explain CI, CD? How do you explain DevOps to the auditor? And then number 8 is how much doc is too much doc? Yeah. All right. Good. So barriers toward automation, DevOpsSec, culture change, cloud providers, CD pipelines, decomposing complex things, explain to your auditor, and too much doc.